Hi, I'm Graham Blackburn, and this is Traditional Woodworking by Hand. And in this episode, we're working our way through one of the many books that I've written, and this particular episode is all about marking. We did an episode not so long ago about what I call the 4 most important rules of woodworking. And the last rule was that if you're going to join 2 or more pieces of wood together, it pays to mark them. So this episode is all about what's the best way to mark things. Well, most people would assume that you just pick up a pencil. And yeah, it's true. Sometimes if I'm not particular in a hurry, I can use the pencil and you can see the line. But I don't like to do that on finished work because, first of all, I don't want the graphite in the wood. Depending on the species of the wood, it might be hard to get out. And secondly, it's not a particularly exact way of marking. So I don't use pencils except in a very rare occasion. Least of all do I use the common carpenter's pencil, which is much too broad, and even if you sharpen it really fine, you've got a big line and it's a real pain. Before pencils were invented, at the beginning of the 19th century, I think some Frenchmen invented them in like 1797 or whatever, most woodworkers, most furniture makers used chalk. And in fact, the use of chalk is one way that you can prove that an antique is actually a genuine antique. In the old days, before we had power tools, it was common not to finish the parts of a piece of furniture you might be making that were not visible, like the back or the underneath of drawers or the insides of cupboards. And if you look at a genuine antique, you can still often see how they marked. They marked with chalk. Chalk is much better because it's easily gotten rid of if you do actually put some finish on there. But chalk was the original way of marking. Nowadays, of course, we have a whole range of different tools for marking, and I'm going to talk about some of them and explain why some are better than others. The commonest thing is like a little bradawl. It's just a short pin. Here's a longer one. It's also called a bradawl. Here's a really long one that they call a scratch-awl. And these are good because you can get into the corners of things, but they don't give you a very deep line. And if they do, then the line tends to be V-shaped. It's much better, and I apply this particular theory to all my marking tools here. If you make a mark with a single beveled knife, here is, I put a little handle on it, but here is a Japanese marking knife. And you'll notice that it's got a bevel on one side and it's flat on the other side. That means that if I'm marking this piece of wood, say this is going to be the work side and this is the waste, as many times as I do this, on the flat side, I'm going straight down. It's only on the beveled side that I'm making a groove. That preserves the exactness of that line. If I were to do that with a regular knife, I'd get a V groove on both sides and I'd lose the exactness of the workpiece. Using a single beveled marking knife also has another advantage, which is that if you do it deeply enough, it provides a little groove. I'll show you here. We'll go down. We do this several times. It provides a groove that actually does something else. It allows the saw to sit right in the groove. So for most of your marking, if you're marking things very exactly and you don't want to undo the exactness of however you've measured it in the first place, and I should point out at this point that we recently did a whole episode on measuring, and I want to take a moment to thank everybody who subscribed and point out that what we're actually doing right now is to go through the second of the many books that I wrote on woodworking, and we're going through chapter by chapter talking about different things. And I want to thank everybody who has subscribed, and if you'd like to subscribe or ask questions or whatever, you should always go to my website where it lists all the books that I've written, tells you really easily how you can simply email me or telephone me and order the books, and it also tells you how you can contact me if you'd like to come and take private lessons. I love to give lessons right here in the shop, even though I travel all over the country and do other things, but giving lessons is really good, especially in this day and age when there are fewer and fewer things that people can actually do. So thanks to all the subscribers, and for the new ones, please take the time to subscribe. So now we've talked about the importance of making a line that is not going to leave graphite or anything difficult to remove from the wood. And we've talked about making a line that is really sharp on one side and doesn't impinge on the actual measurement, and which, if you do it deeply enough, actually provides you with a little guide. One of the other great rules of woodworking is that we don't do anything freehand. Whatever we do, there's invariably some kind of jig or device to guarantee that what we're doing is exact. And that's what a sharp groove will do. It will provide you a method of doing that with a saw. Now, we talked about these, and these are okay if you just want to go around. These are particularly good if you've got something detailed and kind of makes a mark. But if you want a really useful mark, then there are a lot of other devices. So let's look at some of them here. Here, despite what I said about pencils, here is a simple pencil gauge. Made it myself. You just need an arm and a stock. I secured that with a thread, and I can do this down here. I can use this to make a pencil mark, if indeed I am going to use a pencil gauge. Now, slightly better than that is an old Stanley model. You'll notice, however, if you come really closely, that there's a screw at the end here. What's that for? Well, it's because I take the trouble to sharpen the pins of all the marking gauges I use so that they're just like the Japanese marking knife. They're perfectly straight on the side that's going to be against the actual workpiece, and they're beveled on the waste side. Sometimes, if I'm marking, I want this to be the waste. So I would loosen this screw and turn the pin so that the beveled side is towards the waste. I do that with all of these. You can even see I do it on the pencil gauge here too. So that's a useful thing to bear in mind. Essentially, whatever you use to mark should be beveled so that one side is straight. Now, this particular Stanley tool has another advantage, which is that on the other side of the head, there are a couple of brass nubs. Now, you can just add these out of wood. What the brass nubs do is to guarantee that, although if I'm using the straight side, I'm getting a straight line. If I'm trying to go around a circle, say I'm doing like this, and I only have a flat surface, then I get a tangential mark. But by turning the head around, just a simple matter of doing this, now the two little nubs will guarantee that whatever mark I make is perfectly tangential. So one of these, although it looks very simple, is really good. These, of course, come in a whole variety of sizes. Here's an example of a really big one, right? This also has the added advantage that it's got measurements that start from the pin. But you'll notice that the pin also, which is secured by a screw here, is beveled on one side. So whichever way I want the actual workpiece to do, I have to make sure by loosening this and turning this around if necessary, that the flat side is towards the actual workpiece. So that's a big one. Now, in the old days, before we had Stanley, there were a range of tools that were really, really good. And here's an example of a really fine example. It's got a brass face. It's got a knife, which also, if you look at it really closely, is beveled on one side. And it can be changed by loosening this. It has a screw here, and it has a really nice long arm to it. This is definitely a prince of marking gauges. Similar to this, in the same kind of family, is one of these. What's this, you say? Why is it so short? Well, it's because if you look closely, you can see that there are two pins here. This is a marking gauge, right? So by loosening this screw here, you can move the inside screw in and out so that in conjunction with the forward screw, you can make a mortise. I'll do it on the piece here. You can see the two lines. There, now I don't know if you can see that, but there's one line and there's the other line. So this is a really high-end mortise gauge. There were lots of these. Here's another one. This one has one pin on one side and another pin on the other side, which means that by adjusting either of them, I can adjust both sides of what I want the mortise to be. So keep an eye out for double pinned marking gauges, because they very often are mortise gauges that can be very, very useful. It's much easier to set the two pins to the width of the mortise that you want to do rather than have to keep measuring. In a previous episode on measuring, I mentioned the fact that we have in America, we still have the rather peculiar imperial system of feet and inches and whatnot, and it's very hard if you're measuring something to and you find you've got to measure a piece of wood that's 2 inches and a quarter and a 16th plus a little bit. It's much easier if you establish your first measurement and you use all subsequent pieces of wood that have to join just to measure that, and you don't need to know what the actual measurement is. So that's an important thing to do. Here's one other handy little device that Stanley invented, and this is a butt gauge. And what this does, because you have different pins here and then you can adjust here, this is very useful for marking out the outline and the depth of hinges. So these are very good too. It can be hard when you trying to set a hinge. You may very easily mark the outside, but to mark the actual depth is a bit trickier. Marking gauges, like many other tools, also come in a wide range of sizes. Here's a small one, my little pencil gauge. Here's a really big one. By loosening this and moving this, I can mark something that's almost 2 feet long. If I want even further, then I can use these. You can find a piece of wood that these fit on, and I can either use this is excellent for making circles, but if I take this off, take this one off here, you can see that I have a pencil there. I can make a mark all the way down there. So the point of this is that there are lots of different ways of marking. The two most important things are: don't use pencils if you want to risk the don't want to risk being unable to remove the graphite and perhaps blunt your tools. And secondly, that it helps to make sure that the marking point is straight on one side that's against the workpiece and beveled on the other side. So I hope that helps. There's a lot more that you can learn about marking if you look at the chapter on marking here in the book, which, as I said before, you can always find by going to my website. And I hope you give me a call, and it would be great to see anybody who wants to come for lessons. And good measuring and good marking. Thank you.